What is up, guys? My name is Doug Polk, and welcome back to Poker Hands. Today we're going to be looking at another hand from the World Series of Poker main event final table, and it's a long one, so let's jump right in there. Just to catch you up to speed here at the final table, we're down to three-handed, and everyone is quite deep. The shortest stack being Gordon Vayo has about 76 big blinds, and the deepest stack being Qui Win has around 110, 115. So the structure of this event's obviously very good. Day 2 of the final table was quite quick, and we've got maybe some more traditional cash game style stacks here to play with. Just want to give you those notes going here into pre-flop action.
An enhancement to our coverage this year is that the players can see, and we can see, the folded cards as well, which is tonight just one other player if they're heads up. And look at this, pocket deuces with a raise, and now another pocket pair for Vayo.
Little deuce 3-9 on the flop, boys. That'll make things interesting.
Well, particularly if Qui Win has pocket nines.
Call.
And there's a call of the 2.5 million chip raise, and ace jack for win offsuit.
Win wants to re-raise here, as he should, three-handed with ace jack. Especially since the small blind limped, right? And so you want to play a pot against the small blind in position, given he just called. So I love this raise.
Re-raise to 7.7 million to the smallest pocket pair.
Right, and I think that Josephy will call just because he's in position. He wants to hit a deuce. If he does, which happens 1 in 8.5 times, he is, he puts himself in a position to potentially win a massive pot off of win. I really don't think we'll see a re-raise, and if he does end up calling, I think Vayo will also call because he's getting a great price to try and flop a set as well.
They're all deep. Win starting the hand with 117 big blinds, Vayo with 77, Josephy with 85. Those yellow chips are worth 1 million each. They're a bit oversized just because they're big. They're worth $1 million. The $500 million chips the same size. The lavenders are worth 100,000. Normal sized poker chip, and there is a call.
And Vayo will call as well.
Well, shouldn't the $100 bill be bigger than the $1 bill? You're telling me, Long?
Well, the portrait I think is bigger, isn't it?
Oh, Ben Franklin does have a bigger head than George Washington.
Call.
You're welcome.
How about an action flop one time?
There you go. Ace jack versus deuces versus trays.
Our hand begins with Cliff Josephy opening up the button to about 2.1 big blinds. This is a fine size to use. You can use a lot of different sizes. They're all reasonable. And pocket two is definitely a hand you want to open on the button, especially when you're deep. Your implied odds of hitting your set go up drastically, and being in position is going to help you a lot. Vayo now has a decision to make in the small blind with pocket threes. He can really elect to either flat or 3-bet. I think both options are pretty close and have relatively similar value. I guess I kind of lean towards maybe 3-betting if you think the button's opening wide, but call can also be reasonable, especially if you think the big blind's not going to squeeze often. That said, I'm not sure if he's played much with Qui Win because the big blind does like to squeeze a lot, and that makes me like 3-betting a lot more. If you 3-bet, you take away the big blind's ability to play a lot of flops and squeeze you out of the pot with pocket threes. If the big blind does 3-bet, it puts you in an awkward spot with threes, and it's going to be tough to decide what you really want to do. Anyway, he decides to go for the flat, and Qui Win comes in for the squeeze with ace-jack off. Now, overall, I'm okay with this play. Ace-jack definitely a stronger hand than both players are going to have on average, particularly the button. I guess the small blind's going to have a lot of pairs, a lot of Broadway-type hands as well. But at the same time, ace-jack is going to be very awkward when you get 4-bet. I guess I'd be happier to raise this with ace-jack suited or ace-10 suited or king-queen suited, where if you get 4-bet, you can call easily. If you face a 4-bet now with ace-jack, you're probably going to call, but a lot of the pairs you make could be dominated, and your equity against the value range isn't very good. That said, you still might be able to flat profitably, and you are definitely ahead of the button range. And the button folds, you can isolate the small blind, who probably has to fold their hand pretty much no matter what. Maybe if they have some of their very strongest hands, like 7s, 8s, 9s, ace, queen, ace, jack, didn't 3-bet, they can continue with those. But all these low pairs, etc., those hands are going to have to fold because they're just frankly too weak compared to the strong hands the big blind can have. Anyway, back over to Josephy with pocket twos. I think he has a fairly clear call here on the button. You know, he's calling 5.2 million into a pot that's going to become roughly 17 or 18 million, I think, with the call. So he's definitely getting the odds here on the button. He's in position. He's deep. You know, him and the big blind are probably around 80, 85 big blinds effective. I like the flat. Now Vayo again has a tough spot in the small blind, and as always, the small blind is just the toughest spot, unless you're playing heads up. But he now has to decide, am I getting the direct odds here out of position? He's going to be calling about 5.2 million to win something along the lines of, I don't know, 21, 22 million. It's not really clear to me either way. One of the main problems is how face-up your hand's going to be when you do decide to call there, but I could see call or fold both being reasonable. He likes to call, and let's take a flop.
23.7 million. There's a deuce and a tray. Oh, my goodness.
Didn't you ask for a deuce tray 9 flop?
Oh, my
I don't even know
goodness.
what to say. I guess deuce 3 jack would have been better. I mean, come on. What is this deuce 3 king nonsense?
Vayo and Josephy flop sets. Win, missed it. Oh, my goodness.
Suddenly thinking the set of Joe McKeon against
stunned.
Justin Schwartz at the final table.
Right, exactly.
This hand needs no commentary. The money is going in, especially on a board that's so clean. It's totally rainbow. King deuce 3.
And it's Win who was putting
Bet
chips in the
9.9.
pot first, and the other two say thank you very much. 9.9 million.
Well, that wasn't the money going in that we expected, but that's money that's not coming back.
That's right.
To Queen Win. It'll be part of the other people's pot.
So if I'm in Josephy's seat, I call 100 out of 100 times. There's really no card that I'm scared of on the turn. And I don't want to take my opponent's bluff away on the turn. I want to give him another chance to bet. And maybe he has a hand like ace-jack or ace-10 and an ace peels off on the turn. Maybe I can get a little bit more money from him. And also, there's a player behind me. So if you're ever in this situation and you flop a set, you never want to raise. You're not really worried about someone having pocket threes or pocket kings. If they do, well, so be it. That's basically, it just is what it is. You kind of have to lose. There's no way that Josephy could ever get away from this hand on this flop.
And by the way, what has happened so far in the first few hands of this final championship night is what every poker movie wishes it could be.
Call.
Yeah, it's almost too good to be true.
And there is the call for 9.9 million.
Well, Josephy and Vayo are virtually even stacked. Josephy with a little more. That's all the money that's going to get in the middle that you're talking about. And so one of these two is going to be either out or almost out of chips.
What will Vayo do? I think Vayo has different options. There aren't really many cards that can create more action, right? So either my opponents have a king in their hand or they don't. Well, if any card from 4 to queen comes out, it's not like there's going to be any more action created. So given that I'm out of position,
Just a call. 53.4 million chips in the middle.
I do have to say, before we continue this hand, I love how much Antonio was channeling up that 3 and a 2. You know, he said it so many times. He was wishing, hoping for that to be the flop, get some action going. And sure enough, we've got a flop of king 3-2, set over set, the classic cooler situation. The odds of that are about 1%, so that's extremely rare, even though it does seem like when it happens, you know, the one time you see it at the final table where we have a pair over pair situation, it's only 1% to happen. So very, very unfortunate for the lower set in these instances. And I'll say this before we continue the analysis on the hand. Generally speaking, you have to be okay with the fact that when your opponent has a pair and you have a pair and 2 sets are flopped, somebody's getting stacked. It's just the way that it goes, you know? It's too unlikely for a set to not be good. But I want to talk more about that later in the hand. Let's just talk about the flop here for a moment. So Queen Win decides to go ahead and bet the flop. Choose a size of just about 10 million here, 9.9 million, going with his classic Queen Win sizing of never really going to round numbers, always picking that 0.9, that 0.7. Maybe used to make it more confusing. I really don't know. But he likes to go with about a 40-45% pot bet. And now it's over to Josephy. Now, when you flop a set on a board this dry, what you need to do in general is slow play. because you have a lot of other hands they're going to want to call on C turns. You know, if I have a hand like 4s or 5s, I'm going to be calling here on the button. If I have a hand like, you know, really any pair, I think I'm going to be calling the flop with. King, Queen suited, King, Queen off, King, Jack suited, King, Jack off, as well as King 10 suited, King 9 suited, King 8 suited. And maybe some hands like Ace 5, backdoor flush draw, Ace 4, backdoor flush draw. Both of those hands, if they're suited, can be either flats or 4 bets pre. Those are reasonable either way. Now, additionally, you're going to have some hands like 6-5 suited, 6-4 suited, 5-4 suited, and those can make nice calls too. You can make some argument that having some raises knocks the small blind out, which has a little bit of an advantage. But the way that I see this, when Wynn makes this bet in the flop, he's basically saying he has either a king or better, or he's bluffing, and I don't really see much of a need to polarize our range here on the flop by raising. So I think Josephy should just call with all of his hands that want to continue, and a set fits the bill. Now over to Vayo in the small blind, and this is one of the problems with, you know, flatting these pairs both to the raise and to the 3-bet. You know, not a terrible problem to have when you have second set and someone has bottom set, but you do have this problem that how do you not make your hand kind of obvious? Because the small blind doesn't really have that many great hands here. And they could have maybe 2s or 3s, but those are both ambitious pre-flop. And then you can maybe have a hand like King, Queen suited, King, Jack suited that didn't 3-bet pre. Maybe King 10 suited as well. But there's not too many holdings that he can have here in the small blind. So his range is kind of specific. For that reason, I also like not having any raises here and just calling with all of the hands you want to continue with. So we get a bet. We get calls from both sets. I like how everyone played this hand. Wynn decides to bet the flop. I think it's okay. I don't really mind it either way. Yeah, I think it's reasonable either way. So let's go ahead and see a turn.
4 of diamonds. So Vayo has the other 2 drawing very, very thin, and he's going to check it.
Kui has picked up a wheel draw.
5 would make him a straight.
Right. Kui Wynn is very nervous at this point because he's gotten called by 2 players. Given that the board was King Deuce 3, he almost certainly knows that his Ace Jack is no good. So this is a great time for him to give up.
There's the check. And now Cliff, what does he put in?
Josephy thinks he has the nuts. Oh. He's not worried about anything. And for sure, he's going to bet. There's too many bad cards that can peel off on the river. His hand is a little vulnerable. If a 5 or an ace peel off, those are not the best cards. A diamond makes it a little bit scary. So Josephy has to bet here.
Josephy's family, shoulder on shoulder, hugging each other. You can see the chip counts where they started up at the top of the screen, and then next to their name you can see the chips they have in their stack after they have made their wagers. So Josephy with 84.9 million behind. He's got the yellow bar around his name, which means it's his action.
Wow, the poker gods have been really good to us tonight.
They've been great to Cliff Josephy for this entire main event after day 1, but they have turned right here at this critical junction of the final table.
Indeed. Vayo doesn't know how pretty he's sitting. He has a pretty good idea.
Bet 21 million.
Josephy now with a stack of yellows, 21 million.
There are 336 million chips on the table, 74 million in the middle already, with more to come right now.
Vayo, as you see, 75 million behind, 74 million in the middle.
It's a lot of money out there. If I'm Vayo, I probably lean towards raising. I think calling is just fine as well, but I risk a 5 peeling off.
Exactly.
A 5 is pretty bad for my hand, but again, it's risk versus reward. And if my opponent has a hand like Ace King or maybe pocket deuces like we see he does, am I going to get more action from him on the river anyway? And so I think that I probably lean towards raising.
Josephy feeling so confident.
Man, it is nice to flop a set in Texas Hold'em. It's such a good feeling. He was fortunate to flop a set of 8s against Ruzicka yesterday and double up. And now it looks like he's going to do it again through Josephy.
And that Ruzicka hand was virtually the only hand he seemed to play yesterday, and it put him in great shape.
It's the Phil Hellmuth theory. Just wait for hands and get paid off.
Biggest decision of his poker career.
All in.
And he's all in. He'll say goodbye to Kui Win, most likely.
Well, we've seen crazier, but I promise to quit playing poker for a year if Kui Win makes this call.
Call!
No rooting interest. All right, now it's on Josephy, who wants an exact count. He has Vayo covered by just under 10 million chips.
The turn is the 4 of diamonds, creating a backdoor flush draw and giving Kui Win a gut shot. Vayo checks over to Kui Win as he should with all of his hands, and at this point Kui Win makes the smart decision and decides to throw in the towel. Yeah, he could maybe bluff, he has a gutter, you know, at the end of the day he could have ace, king, aces, his opponents both really can't have those hands, but the situation is getting a little bit more dicey. The button can have hands like ace-5 suited, 6-5 suited, 4-3 suited, 4-4, 3-3, 2-2, and a bunch of kings as well. And then you also have to be worried about this weird small blind range that's very likely to have some sets in it. So for this reason, I'm cool checking almost all of my hands, maybe even all of my hands in Kui Win's position, knowing that there are some very strong ranges behind you that you're not going to want to battle with many hands at all. Anyway, he checks over to Cliff Josephy, and now Cliff makes a very standard bet. He has 3 of a kind. He can have 3-3. He can have 4-4. He can have 6-5 suited or ace-5 suited. So he does have some of those holdings. And if he has a hand too much worse than 2s here, he's probably going to look to check turn. Now, maybe he wants to bet with a hand like king-queen suited, right? Maybe. But even with king-queen or king-jack suited, what are you going to get calls from here from both players that you're going to be ahead of? You know, realistically, maybe Win can check call here with queens or jacks, looking to bet the flop, go for the turn check call. Maybe he can have a hand like king jack or king 10. So there's some value there, I think, by betting to get out of Kui Win. But at the same time, what is Vayo going to call you with? You know, maybe 5s that fold the flop. Maybe 5s make sense. But other than that, he's just going to have a bunch of sets. So 2s is actually near the bottom of the range of hands I'm looking to bet for value. I'm going to look to mainly check some kings back on the turn and not put myself in a tough situation versus check raise. Now over to Vayo. He's got pocket 3s, and this is, again, kind of awkward. If he calls, his hand looks very strong, but if he jams, his hand also looks strong. This is the value position, guys. This is really what it comes down to. Your hand looks very obvious because you're out of position, because you have to, you know, telegraph your strength here with your decision. You know, really, I think both options are fine. I guess I lean towards just calling because if you're going to have a check raise here on the turn, what bluffs are you going to work in? I mean, maybe, I guess if your strategy as Vayo here is going to be to work in a hand like pocket 5s, you know, block some straights and have some outs versus you know, the value bets, I can kind of get behind that. But also, I think I would prefer to just call, fold some of my middling pair hands, call with a few kings I can have, and then call with sets and hands like 5-5 and 6-6. That way, you know, you have a wide array of hands that can call on the turn. Maybe not a wide array, but a range of hands that can call, rather than making a small subset of all-ins. That said, this is fine. I have no problem with this. Kui Win folds, although tanks a bit, like, what's going on there, bro? And it's back over to Cliff Josephy. I do want to say this as well, because I don't think I talked about it the first time around. Cliff should also have some bluffs here, clearly. He should have hands like Queen Jack, backdoor flush draw. He should have a hand like, you know, if he had a hand like Ace-2 suited, this could be a good spot to bluff. Ace-3 suited, this could be a good spot to bluff. You know, you block sets and your hand's not very strong. So Cliff, and then he could bluff with some hands like Ace-Queen or Ace-Jack even that did float the flop, thinking that Win is probably pretty wide and Vayo will normally fold the flop, which he will. So look, I'm normally the guy that gets in here and is like, yeah, call it off and gets stacked. And I'm usually that guy. I'm actually going to advocate here that, first off, very, very tough spot. But I think you might be able to advocate for a fold, okay? Let's just think about this for a moment. you're going to have ace-5 suited and 6-5 suited, okay? If you're 4-betting ace-5 suited, you're not going to have that. But you're going to have some straights. This is not a spot you never have straights. Your opponent in the small blind, he's pretty much never going to have a straight. 6-5 suited is way too weak to take this line, and ace-5 suited probably was going to want to either 3-bet the open or maybe just flat and then fold to the squeeze. I mean, it's awkward either way, I guess, but probably going to look to 3-bet pre-flop. So on this turn, he only can have a set or maybe a bluff with a hand like pocket 5s, pocket 6s, or the ace jack of diamonds that decided to play it like this. I'm not saying that those hands are impossible. Maybe he's going to mix it up and work some of those bluffs in. Seeing how Vayo played, he probably won't, but maybe he will. Who am I to say? But let's think about all of our hands as Cliff Josephy. He has those straights. He has 3-3. He has 4-4. And those hands are a lot better. It is way better. It is way better to have 3s here than 2s. And it is way better to have 4s than 3s. If you have 4s, you're always good against Vayo, essentially. If you have 3s, you're good half the time if you never bluff. So 2s, even though it's a set, it's surprisingly weak given the range of hands we are going to bet here. We're not going to bet many hands. So I think maybe you could advocate, given what Vayo's hand looks like, which looks like a set, and given how strong your range is to bet in the first place, you don't really have kings when you bet here, or a king in your hand when you bet here. I think you might be able to advocate for a bet fold. Now, it's close either way. If you're going to be bet folding sets in a lot of spots, you're probably going to overfold. And this would be a slightly exploitative fold, probably within your range to bet fold. But what does Vayo's hand look like, and what hands can he really have?
I mean, he doesn't have ace-king in this spot because he also would have put in the 4th bet. And is he going to do this with a hand like king-queen? It's extremely unlikely he does it with king-queen. The only hand he can have is pocket 3s. But I flopped the set, and it's impossible to
that
fold.
clouds your pot, no matter who you are.
Yeah, no matter what.
Well, we've seen Josephy make a couple of really nice laydowns.
He called.
Ooh.
Oh, my goodness, he called. And Josephy sees the bad news.
I knew he had it. I can't fold it.
He almost knew it before he turned it over.
Of course. I can't do it. He has a set of 3s. He didn't flat the set of 3s. He didn't flat the 3s yesterday. And he flatted them today. He folded yesterday out of the small.
Có gì đâu, cứ gài 2 thằng set over set luôn này.
Joe Cato.
Gordon
Where's Joe
Vayo
Cato?
looking at a pot of $203 million.
We need a 2. We need a 2.
Well, the main event balance for both of these two hangs right here. All in for Gordon Vayo, but way ahead.
Where's Gargano?
And one card to come.
We need a 2.
Cliff Josephy almost all in.
A 2 is coming.
And there's only one deuce left in the deck.
2 is coming. Put a deuce up there. It's coming.
Positive thinking.
I've never used my 1 time. I don't want it yet.
6 of diamonds will end it, and Gordon Vayo set over set is the new chip leader. The chip leader once again.
So I guess at the end of the day, I don't mind the call. I think it's fine. I think that this might have been a spot he could have made a hero fold to get away from it. Admittingly, I have a tough time making those hero folds. So, next time I have a set and stack off, I don't want to hear like, Doug, you said fold your sets. No, I understand that a set is strong. But I do think given all of the very good hands he can have here and how little he should be betting, you can advocate for a fold here with pocket 2s. All right, thank you for joining me here today for Poker Hands, and we're going to have more from the World Series of Poker main event. What is up, guys? Doug Polk here, and today we're going to be introducing you to my good friend, the subscribe button. Now, me and the subscribe button don't go back that long. I think it's been like 4 months, but we're getting along just fine, and I would love for you to be able to meet him as well. Check it out.